our framework to be able to actually confirm whether or not employees are following these practices is really based off of really kind of a four-pronged approach. And we believe in documenting processes. We believe in creating standardized operating procedures, and then creating training, which communicates the why behind everything that you do and why it's so important. It's kind of like the difference between when you're maybe a parent and saying, hey, kind of, son, I want to make sure that you actually buckle up. And if you just tell them to buckle up, you might say, hey, why do I need to buckle up? It's not that important. But if you just tell them to buckle up, you probably won't do it. But if you communicate, well, I want you to buckle up because I'm actually going to prevent you from getting injured if we ever happen to get into a car crash, and it's really for your own personal safety, he's able to understand the why. And the same thing is true with all of your processes. If you just dictate, say, do this, do this, do this, do this, well, it seems kind of unnecessary. I don't need to do that. I'd be a little bit quicker if I just didn't do one of those things. But if you can communicate the why behind everything that you do, all of those processes tend to resonate a little bit better and ensures that everyone's aligned. So we always ensure that we're documenting processes. We're then standardizing all of those operating procedures, creating training that communicates the why, and then the overlay to actually confirm whether or not employees are following your practices is creating a system of checks and balances. And that can really come in the form of either paper checklists, maybe you have a project management software. And for those unfamiliar with project management softwares, there's kind of applications out there like Asana, there's Trello, there's Wrike, Basecamp, a ton of other, Monday.com. And you can also just kind of create, and that's where you can actually create digitized checklists and forms to actually create a little bit more accountability.
Yeah, I think that's a great framework. I was laughing in the middle of your story because I'm thinking of my kids. I have a 7-year-old and a 4-year-old now. And like this weekend, I'm like yelling into the back seat of like, why isn't your seatbelt on already? And, it's like, and so going through the conversation of like, well, why do I need the seatbelt? You could fall out of the car. I don't know. You could open the door, you fall out of the car. Like, how fast is it dangerous if I don't wear like, do I have to wear it in the driveway? Do I have to wear it? So my seatbelt process would be very heavily documented for my kids. But no, I think your framework's spot on. So what I usually say around this is when people think of checklists or project management systems that you're checking a box to recognize the completion of a task, it's a very different thing than when you're training someone how to do the task the first time. So a perfect story around this is in my video production company, my first business, when I was first getting into all this systemization kind of stuff, I read the Checklist Manifesto, which is an awesome book. And I left that book thinking, okay, I need checklists for everything. And so I made checklists for every production process that we had, every pre-event planning process, staffing, equipment preparation before we'd ship it out, fulfillment, everything had a checkbox associated. And so for a standard event that we would film, we had something like 150 different steps from pre-production all the way through the production and post-production and closing the events out, accounting and all that. And so those 150 steps were assigned out to all the different members of the team that did those things. But as the business started to grow and we did not just, like one event a week, and we were doing 3 events and 5 events and 10 events a week, those people would get assigned the 150 tasks times the 10 events that week, times the, 50 events that month, times the, and our production cycle could be 3 months from planning an event to closing it out. So I had people that were sitting in their project management system on like 3,000-4,000 tasks. And it is just so unmanageable. So when we looked at that, they were telling me, these tasks, these are things that like, I know how to do all these things. And I feel like you're just standing over my shoulder. Like you need to know the second that I complete every task. Are you even looking at the system that shows you that I completed it? And I realized, no, I wasn't. What I was doing was just making sure that they were appropriately trained and then wanting to know as every event moved through the stages of pre-production, production, post-production, like where was the event at? I was more interested in like capacity than I was in task management. And so it's a big lesson for me personally, but what came out of that is that the doing is different from the learning to do. And that once someone knows how to do something, you don't need to look over their shoulder and track every micro step of that thing. And so I think people, have great intentions when they get started with checklists, but you can definitely overdo it. Checklists are good for tasks. They're good if you've got like a temp labor force. They're good if you need to granularly watch over someone's shoulder. But if you find yourself micromanaging people that are just really great employees, you can kind of start to move away from the granular checklists and focus on just training and role development. And then the accountability piece that you're mentioning, that kind of just relates to, KPIs and how you're measuring someone in a business. It's not all about task completion, but sometimes it's about the end result of what did the client rate the experience with you, and you start to measure people based on more the results than the task. So I'm curious what you think about that.
Yeah, I think you brought up a lot of really good points there. I completely agree. You definitely can over-engineer kind of the level of detail of checklists. And there's almost kind of two different kinds of checklists. There's kind of the learn and do type of checklist, which might be the really, really super heavy detail of read this step, and then I can do this exact same step. So I would almost think about this like maybe a recipe to be able to kind of create, I don't know, beef Wellington or some type of like elaborate type of dish. Or a kind of a do and confirm is more of kind of a simple kind of milestone based type checklist. And I think that the goal there is really just to kind of confirm that the major like milestones are completed. And so I think that there's sort of a time and the place, and it'll sort of depend on the workflow and really kind of the process at hand. But it can become a little bit overwhelming. So it's if you do put way too many checklists in place, and there's always maybe the issue that, hey, we're just checking off these items, whether or not they're even kind of confirmed. So it is better to our best practice is to keep it a little bit simpler, keep it kind of one page, and really making sure that you're trying to prevent mistakes from happening rather than just assuming that all of your employees are incapable of actually following your processes. So I kind of try to use it more of a, I guess, more of kind of a bumpers on following your processes, that as long as you kind of complete the high level steps, we're going to be able to actually obtain the same exact result or outcome.
Yeah, I like that. It's the like reference checklist is something just to make sure you don't miss anything. I think the pre-flight checklists with airplanes are like that, right? It's like a reference to make sure you didn't miss any of the steps, but it's not like you're, logged into a project management system, clicking on all of those as you go, whereas like a IKEA build is something that like you need to look at it and then do the thing and look at the next step and do the thing. So yeah, checklists are a loaded topic. That's all I'll say here, because we've been asked since Trainual was in its infancy when we might introduce some form of task management.